Hi, this is Les and Amy from the RevGenetics podcast. You can listen to the podcast on YouTube and now on Spotify, where we do a deep dive on supplements and longevity studies.
Yeah, and today we are looking at a super fascinating new study from the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences. It is basically all about how simple sound waves can actually help severely severed nerves completely regrow and heal.
Right, which is just, it's totally wild to think about, because if you're listening to this and you have ever had, a severe sports injury or a really bad accident, you know how incredibly hard nerve damage is to deal with. Think of your nerves like these living electrical cables inside your body. When they get cut, it is not just a clean break.
No, not at all. It was literally like a massive 10-lane highway just completely collapsing.
Yeah, exactly. It is
Wow.
an absolute disaster zone. You cannot just come in and immediately pour new asphalt.
Right.
The whole path is just covered in twisted metal and broken concrete. You had to bring in huge cranes to clear all that junk out first.
Right. And that is exactly what happens inside your tissue. The broken pieces of the nerve shatter and just pile up. It leaves this chaotic mess of cellular debris that acts like a massive physical barricade. It blocks any new growth.
So historically, clearing that wreckage out meant some really invasive surgeries, right?
Yeah, incredibly invasive. Surgeons would have to physically go in, clean it out, maybe even use nerve grafts. But this new study completely changes the game. They are using something called extracorporeal shockwave therapy.
Okay, wait, that sounds like super intense, like some kind of laser weapon.
I know the name is a mouthful, but it is really just sound waves. Think of it like a very tiny, incredibly gentle jackhammer. Or, well, you know when you were at a concert and the bass dropped.
Oh, yeah, where you can physically feel the vibration thumping in your chest.
Exactly. It sends these targeted mechanical ripples deep down into the tissue. And your cells, they actually feel that physical vibration. It is like a gentle massage that stretches the outside of the cell.
Oh, wow, so the sound wave physically pulls on the cell.
Yeah, and when it does that, it presses a very specific start button inside the cell. The scientists call it the ERK12 pathway, but honestly, we can just think of it as the cell's ignition switch for healing.
Gotcha. So the sound wave essentially turns the key in the ignition, and then what happens once that switch is flipped?
Well, flipping that switch wakes up these special helpers called Schwann cells. They act like the nerve's personal bodyguards and cleanup crew. They immediately start a process called autophagy.
Autophagy, which is, if I remember correctly, it is basically the body's internal recycling center, right?
You nailed it. It is like a cellular Pac-Man. When that ignition switch turns on, these Pac-Man cells go into absolute overdrive.
So they just start gobbling up all the dead, broken pieces of the crushed nerve?
Yep, they eat up the wreckage, digest it, and clear it entirely out of the way. So now you have this perfectly clean, smooth pathway for the new nerve to grow back through.
That is mind-blowing. And they proved this actually works in a real experiment, didn't they?
They did. They took a group of rats that had their leg nerves completely cut, creating that huge highway disaster zone, and then they just applied this gentle sound wave therapy right to the outside of the rat's legs. No surgery at all.
And the nerves actually grew back?
Yeah, the results were amazing. They looked at the rats' footprints as they recovered. The ones that got the sound waves walked with way more stability, and their leg muscles stayed nice and plump too, instead of just withering away from lack of use.
That is incredible. But wait, how do they know it was definitely that ignition switch causing it?
Oh, this is the best part. They took another group of rats and used a chemical to temporarily glue that ignition switch shut.
Oh, I see. So the sound waves could not press the button.
Exactly. And when the switch was blocked, the healing stopped entirely. The Pac-Man cleanup crew never showed up, but when they used a booster to press that switch even harder alongside the sound waves, the nerves grew back thicker and faster than ever.
Wow, so that is absolute proof. The body already has this incredible built-in cleanup process just waiting to be activated. And, with RevGenetics, we are uncovering the latest insights in science. We really love having them alongside us as we dive into this research.
We really do. And since this entire nerve healing study revolves heavily around autophagy, it is pretty cool that RevGenetics offers supplements specifically designed to support your body's natural autophagy and cellular longevity processes.
Yeah, for sure. Supporting your cellular health from the inside out really does build the foundation for everything we talk about today.
It absolutely does. And, pulling out of the rat lab for a second, the future potential for humans here is just staggering.
Right, because think about a regular person getting into a bad car accident, or a college athlete dealing with a devastating sports injury where a nerve gets crushed. Right now, the options are pretty grim.
Yeah, it is a ton of invasive surgery, grueling physical therapy, and just hoping the nerve slowly finds its way back through all that scar tissue.
But this study points to a future where, instead of a scalpel, a physical therapist could just use a wand on the outside of your skin.
Exactly. Just applying non-invasive sound waves directly over the injury to jumpstart that Pac-Man cleanup crew.
Okay, I have to jump in and push back on this a little bit, though. Because if physical vibration is all it takes to heal a nerve, why aren't we just strapping heavy subwoofers to people's legs after an accident? Like, there has to be a catch.
Oh, definitely. You cannot just blast the tissue with random vibrations. Moving this to a human clinic requires finding what researchers call the Goldilocks zone.
Meaning it has to be just right.
Exactly. If the sound waves are too weak, the vibration just dissipates into the fat and muscle, the nerve never feels it, the ignition switch never flips, and the wreckage just stays there.
Okay, and if we do strap a massive subwoofer to the leg, if it is too strong,
Then you are using a heavy demolition jackhammer instead of a gentle one. You could cause severe secondary trauma, like destroying the extremely fragile new nerve fibers trying to grow.
oh man, so it could actually make things worse.
It could. The acoustic pressure has to be meticulously balanced, and a human thigh has thick skin, fat, and dense muscle that the sound has to navigate. That is why the immediate next steps require large animal studies before this hits the clinic.
That makes total sense. The depth calibration alone is a huge engineering challenge. But there was another variable that really caught my eye here. What happens if a person's natural healing switch is already glitchy?
Ah, yes. The study explicitly notes that. For people dealing with diabetes, metabolic diseases, or just advanced age, that specific ERK12 pathway can be a lot harder to activate.
So their ignition switch is essentially rusty.
That is a great way to put it. So doctors in the future cannot just use a one-size-fits-all approach. A healthy 20-year-old might just need a 5-minute sound wave session at a low frequency to wake up their cells.
But a 60-year-old with diabetes might need something completely different.
Right. They might need a stronger frequency or longer, more frequent sessions to generate enough mechanical force to unstick that rusty switch.
I love the idea of getting a personalized sound wave prescription based on your metabolic health. It really feels like we are watching a massive shift in medicine.
We really are. It is the dawn of something called mechanobiology. For the last 100 years, medicine has relied almost completely on chemicals. You take a pill for blood pressure, an injection for inflammation.
Basically using chemicals to tell the body what to do.
Exactly. But mechanobiology flips that script. It is the realization that our cells are not just chemical factories. They are highly sensitive mechanical sensors. They constantly feel their physical environment.
So by speaking their language, using physical forces like sound waves, we are literally learning how to drum on the outside of a cell to make it heal itself on the inside.
It completely changes how you think about your own body, doesn't it? Knowing your cells are constantly feeling and reacting to the physical world around them.
We hope today's episode gives you a great jumping off point and sparks your curiosity to explore further. That's it for today. See you next episode.
Thank you for listening to the RevGenetics podcast.
RevGenetics.com for the best longevity supplements on Earth.